Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Talking Future, a podcast by the Entrepreneurs Forum where we talk to Northeast entrepreneurs about their work, their lives and especially their views on the future and how they're innovating as they plan ahead. I'm Yvonne Bell and today I'm talking to Sandy Chen, CEO and co-founder of Graphene Composites. With its headquarters in Sedgefield, Graphene Composites work with graphene and other nanomaterials to create life-changing products for their partners. One of their newest inventions includes GC Ink, a patent-pending ink designed to capture and destroy viruses and bacteria, including COVID-19. Good morning, Sandy.
Morning.
Good morning. I can see by your background that you're quite financial, to put it mildly. So can you start off by setting the scene and telling us how you've ended up taking the scientific route and where did your passion for this sector begin?
Well, I was an investment banker or an investment analyst for about 25 years, and sort of for my sins, I think one of the things that we were working on was helping some graphene companies prepare for the public markets. And so I was looking at that. And then also my wife and I were building a new house and we were looking at insulating it with another, what they call nanomaterial called aerogel. And one night we just found ourselves putting those two things together and said, what if you put the world's strongest material, which is graphene, together with the world's best insulator, which is aerogel? What could you do with it? And one of the things that popped to our minds was bulletproof armor. And that's how it started 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So it was just a thought that came to you. It's a funny thing to have across the dinner table.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be clear, I mean, we did absolutely nothing with it for a good year or so until another dinner party where my wife finally turned to me and said, will you just do something about it? And so we ended up starting the company and got to here.
Yeah. And did you actually start the company over there and you've come to Sedgefield? Because I was going to ask you why you're here now.
Well, we started it, no, I mean, we literally started it over our kitchen table, but then we moved to Sedgefield because our main partner in developing the technology, taking the idea to really, a real product was and remains the UK's Centre for Process Innovation, which is based in Sedgefield.
Right, okay.
At Net Park.
That's how you came to come here. How do you find it then? Do you like working up here?
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, in a word, they, without CPI's help, and to give a bit of background, the CPI or the Centre for Process Innovation was set up, it was probably about 10 years ago, with over £100 million worth of facilities and equipment, specifically to kind of help companies take ideas from the idea stage into commercial reality. And it's chock full of scientists and facilities that really small companies in particular can't really access themselves. So when we first started, the natural partner for us in making our ideas real was CPI, and they played a crucial role. So we got along so well that we decided to move to Sedgefield as well.
And so who were you working with? Obviously, there was your wife was involved at this stage. I take it you worked together.
Yes.
And who else? Who else did you sort of rely on to be your main graphene person then? Who was that?
Well, so our main graphene person is our Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Stephen Devine. And the way we got to meet him was at CPI, where he was the principal scientist at the National Formulation Center or Graphene Application Center. Pretty much everything that went on in applying graphene or turning graphene ideas into reality had to go through Steve's brain, as it were. Mm-hmm. And what we ended up doing was we worked very well together in developing our GC Shield range of armor products. And we liked each other so much that he decided to join us.
Mm-hmm. And now do you have a few people work with you still?
Yeah, we've got a team of about 12, both here in the UK and in the US. And the main scientists are still at CPI. And we also have a number of other companies in the Northeast that we work with that are all in the same area of nanotechnology.
Yeah. Just as a business person, how do you feel, or how do you find working with scientists? Because they do have different brains to financial people, I would have thought.
It's been interesting, and I mean, in a good way, because you're absolutely right. I mean, that was my impression, that a lot of scientists tended to be in silos, that they were very good at their particular area that they'd chosen to specialize in, but not that used to collaborating across silos, answering questions like, what would happen if you put the world's strongest material together with the world's best insulator, and could you stop a bullet?
Yeah.
And so I think that first year really was about kind of learning as a team how to work together and collaborate and cross-fertilize, and then, and to be blunt, fail quite a few times, and then learn from those failures to eventually, over the course of a couple of years, successfully develop a product.
Because they probably find your brain is wired differently.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think probably interesting is the kindest word for it.
Yeah.
Along the way, I think we all found ourselves, once we got over the sort of all the failures that you had to get through along the development process, and learning to, in a perverse way, sort of enjoy the failures and learn from them, and then move forward as a team. That became quite a strong ethos within our group that enabled us to sort of move forward as one.
Yeah, I suppose you've got a common purpose then, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's get on to the products a little bit. For those like me who really don't know, what is graphene and what is it used for normally?
Well, so graphene is a form of carbon. Carbon is one of the elements. It's in carbon dioxide, which you're breathing out. Well, we're all breathing out right now. Is in the atmosphere. Carbon comes in a couple of forms. One of the other forms of carbon is a diamond. Another form is graphite in pencil leads. And graphene is a single layer of carbon atoms arranged in a honeycomb pattern. And if you do it in that way, it is the strongest arrangement of carbon atoms that you can come up with. And it's roughly 100 times stronger than steel, for example, and also highly conductive, roughly 20 times more conductive than copper.
And so from Graphene Composites' point of view, what do you do with it, and what makes you special? What
we'd like to think what we know how to do, and this is largely because of our Chief Technology Officer, is what they call functionalize graphene and other nanomaterials. And what I mean by functionalize is that graphene is this wonder material, but by nature, it's really quite inert. And the way to sort of think about it is that I don't know if you've ever tried to make hot chocolate and found that, you've run out of your hot chocolate mix, and you go in and you get your cocoa powder, you stick it in the hot milk, and it doesn't dissolve. All it does is sort of clump into these little balls of wet cocoa powder in your hot milk. That's the same thing that graphene sort of does if you don't functionalize it. And what I mean by functionalizing is that we attach other molecules or arrangements of elements onto the graphene that enable it to disperse and sort of attach to other things, much like, when you get a proper hot chocolate mix, it turns into hot chocolate. And it's knowing what the right mix is, how to get that graphene functionalized properly, and then applying it to the specific application that you need, that we think we do quite well.
Yeah, I'd never thought of hot chocolate that way ever before, but it does happen. I know what happens with cocoa, yeah. So moving on to the sort of funding issue, I mean, obviously you can't just start businesses like that, but you use crowdfunding. Was it easy, or did you find that it did have its pitfalls, or how did it work for you?
Well, we ended up choosing to crowdfund because actually, when we were starting out in 2016, the idea was probably too radical for traditional sources of funding for tech companies like venture capital funds or private equity funds. And they kept on saying to us, well, come back when you sort of develop the product. And we'd said, but we need the funding to develop the product. And then sort of the line would go dead. And what we found was that the crowdfunding platforms, there was a greater willingness to say, well, it sounds like a crazy idea, but yeah, I'll invest, £100 in it. And so we found it was actually quite surprisingly easy to raise our first £150,000 of funding to really get the business properly going back in 2016.
The funny thing is, I was just thinking there when you were talking about crowdfunding, you've got a very financial background, and it's amazing that you couldn't just tap into that. It's obviously, there are rules of how people risk their money, aren't there? And maybe crowdfunders just want to give things a chance. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience, actually, because I had experience in, raising, billions. For listed companies, and had a very strong network, but that network of investors, investment funds, and this was too early stage an idea for them to fund. And yeah, we're big fans of crowdfunding because there were £150,000 worth of investors that invested as little as £10 each, but there were a lot of them. I mean, we've ended up having over 3,300 investors, all individuals, who've backed us. Really, some of them backed us from the first crowdfunding round in 2016 to our 8th one, which we just finished about 6 months ago. And along the way, we've raised over £2 million.
Wow. How does that fit in with your shareholder base? I mean, in small companies, you normally have a couple of shareholders and at the most half a dozen. How does it work? Very simply, because those people all have a little stake in your business. Yes.
So we've decided to really communicate with our investors as if we were a publicly listed company. And what that means is issuing regular investor updates where, we tell them how we're doing, not just financially, but strategically. And we keep them up to date as if they had invested in a listed company on the FTSE. And what's been really quite interesting is that there are quite a few investors that we've kept in touch with almost on a weekly basis since 2016. They sort of come in and say, well, how's this going? How's that going? And they've what they call followed their money. In other words, they've added to their original investment. And some of them have really done that all along the way.
And have they got larger amounts? Is it because they've got more commitment to it, or is it just because they're interested?
Yeah, I mean, there were some that started with £100, that then went to £500 and then invest £1,000 and invest £10,000, and that's been great, and it's given us a lot of confidence as well, because we know that we've got this group of investors that really believe in what we're doing and have been able to celebrate our successes and failures really as we've grown.
Yeah. It sounds like gambling, doesn't it? It sounds like they've invested and they're taking more risk. It's almost like they want to make it work. But they obviously see what you're doing as you're doing it right. And I suppose your background helped because you know exactly what you've got to do. You know all the pitfalls of financial control and everything, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, it does. That has helped because I think our general approach has been to communicate as much as we can with the investors, with our shareholders along the way. And actually, I mean, to be clear, those shareholders include, my father-in-law, most of our relatives and friends and family. Yeah, right. So it's always been a very open sort of way of running the business.
It's a family business, actually.
And that's been it's been I think it's been a learning experience to just not just tell the good news, but also just communicate the bad news and the challenges and and the pitfalls that we've encountered along the way.
So what would you say, since you started in 2016, have been the biggest obstacles? Was it the funding, or Or was it this other part that you said you had to settle down and work together and make it happen?
I think it was a combination. I mean, the main challenge has been the technical challenge. It took us about 3 years of failures before we were able, in our GC Shield armor product, to stop a decent sized bullet. And so that meant, literally about 2.5 years of developing a version of the armor, trudging down to test firing facilities to do the actual ballistic testing, watching a bullet slice through our version 5 of our armor, and then trudging back to the labs and going, oh, well, okay, well, let's see, why don't we do this? And then I think it was version 22 before we finally managed to stop a decent sized bullet, if that makes sense.
And it seems quite strange to me that there is a market for that, but you started in America and there is a market for it, isn't there? Because there are a lot of guns. And did I read right that you're possibly trying to formulate something for children to wear?
Well, what we decided to focus on was developing a version of our armor, or what we call our GC Shield, for schools. And it was after there'd been a number of active shooter tragedies, really, in America, school shootings and things like that. And we decided to really focus on developing a product that could be used to protect students and teachers from those types of attacks.
Yeah.
It was quite a interesting thing to be doing, because the focus, as one would expect for kind of bulletproof armor, was always the police or the military and protecting against threats like that. Not many were looking at how to protect schools from active shooters. And so that's what we chose to focus on.
Yeah. And is that something that you're working on it, or have you got it now? Have you got the product?
Yeah, we've successfully developed and tested it, and we are talking with a couple of schools are placing their first orders for our GC Shield technology.
Yeah, it's just not something that I would have ever thought about, but obviously it's a need and you're fulfilling it, so that's good. So just moving on to other products, research has shown that sheets of graphene can absorb twice as much impact as Kevlar, which is a material that's used in bulletproof vests. But as well as being used in armor, do you think we'll see graphene used in other bulletproof surfaces, such as windows and things like that?
Well, with the shield, what we call our GC Shield technology, we have been focusing on, for school protection, a version that is like a drop-down curtain. Right. And so if a shooter were to try to shoot through the windows, effectively this bulletproof curtain would drop down, and then similarly at school entrances, etc. Graphene can be used to strengthen a lot of materials, including glass and windows. Our shield technology really uses, besides graphene, aerogel to what they call disperse the impact force. So what that does is it gives a much greater level of protection to the person behind that shield, because a lot of times you're hurt or injured not by the bullet itself, but by the shock wave from the bullet as it hits the shield. It hits a piece of armor, and what our GC Shield technology does is it disperses that force far more effectively than, say, Kevlar.
Fascinating. And it can be very flexible and lightweight. So there are other uses of graphene, isn't there? There are other uses down the line. So there's a lot to go at. So can we just move on to the onto COVID? Don't want to talk about it, but we're gonna go there. How has it changed your ways of working? Has it changed your ways? Obviously, you're working from home now, and is that what everybody's doing?
Yes. We do go into our labs at Net Park in Sedgefield to do the lab work that we can't do from home. But 90% of what we're doing is from our homes.
And one of the things that I mentioned in the introduction was your project on this ink that captures and destroys viruses. I don't really understand that at all. Can you just make it simple for us, like the cocoa. Do a cocoa job on it.
Right.
Just
Okay.
let us understand how without giving obviously trade secrets away, how does it work?
So what we've developed is a way of trapping and then destroying viruses, including coronavirus, and it works in two ways. What we've developed is a graphene oxide silver nanoparticle formulation called GC Inc. Now, I know that all those words are English, but what do they mean? Well, the graphene is very good at attracting and trapping the water droplets in the air or in breath, and also the protein spikes on coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And what the silver nanoparticles are very good at doing is, in the complicated way of saying it, is oxidizing the lipid membrane that's protecting the RNA within the coronavirus. But the simpler way of saying that is that's what destroys the virus or bacteria. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
A little bit, yeah. I'm getting there with it. I mean, what made anyone in your business start to look at that? Is it because of the graphene configuration? Is that because you know that it does do those things?
Well, one of our mottos that we've developed is, GC for good. And, what we said to each other actually at the beginning of the pandemic, which was, we're developing the idea of GC Inc. It's like, how many other times in our lives are we going to have the opportunity to potentially save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives, literally, by what we do today, as a team. And that's what, those March through, oh God, it's been terrible for all of us, obviously, but what kept us motivated was actually we could do something about it, right? Yeah. Literally each day we could do something to work on the formulation, to see if we can get testing and things like that. And then we found, there were plenty companies, other organizations that were willing to, very interested in exactly the same way. We were working with a university in the US called Brown University that had discovered that graphene oxide, a specific formulation of graphene, was very good at stopping mosquitoes from biting, believe it or not. And so we were working on an ink that could be used on fabrics to basically stop mosquitoes from biting. And when the pandemic hit, we realized we could modify that or augment that formulation by adding things like silver nanoparticles to potentially kill bacteria and destroy viruses, including the coronavirus.
Amazing.
So that was back in March. And again, it took about 6 months of tinkering. Well, actually, really a lot of hard work. Yeah. We put about 2 years of research and development into 6 months. And then we got testing results that showed that it was indeed really effective at destroying coronavirus.
That's got a future, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, I think so. That's fantastic.
And now a note from this episode's sponsor.
Hi there, my name is John Burns and I'm the MD of Diamond Group. Diamond Group are a Northeast-based office technology company which supply most product to do with the office, such as photocopiers, printers, scanners, document management software, laptops, hosted telephony, telephone systems, mobiles, vehicle trackers, office furniture such as desks, chairs. We do some office refits. We also supply training to businesses on everything from leadership management, apprenticeships. There's basically nothing we can't supply business with, really. Any IT you need, we can look after you. If you're interested, you could give us a call on 0191 519 3700, or you can contact us via our website www.diamond-group.net. Thank you.
So in your opinion, with all of these things that graphene can do, how do you see the face of your industry in the next 5, 10 or even 20 years? How do you see things happening and changing?
Well, it's interesting because I think that now where graphene and other nanomaterials is that there are some, real products out there that incorporate these, what they call nanomaterials technologies, and they are really beneficial. And our GC Inc., this, that can be used to fight this pandemic, is, from our point of view, probably one of the best things that we could do as a company to really have a major positive impact. And as sort of other applications that are really truly beneficial, are developed, I think that that's what's going to really gain a broader acceptance and support for nanomaterials technologies really everywhere.
It's quite amazing. And that is just the future, isn't it? Because there's lots of things going on that we don't even know about now.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots on our to-do list, but our first focus is really fighting this pandemic.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, good. And what are you looking forward to then in your business? Because it's quite a young business, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of potential applications that we've begun to explore, and the pandemic really has made us have to put aside a lot of those areas whilst we've focused on developing our GC Inc. But hopefully, as this year sees a lot more progress in terms of the pandemic, we'll be able to really explore other applications of, for example, extending the armor technology to strengthening wind turbine blades and making them last longer, and then lowering the cost of renewable energy production and other things like that.
I know things happen for a reason, but do you sometimes wish you'd done this earlier in your life, in your career?
It's haven't had really time to think about that.
So it's an odd one, isn't it? You've got so far in such a short time. And when it comes to other entrepreneurs and businesses, do you follow anybody else? Or I suppose in your financial world, you had to follow. But were there entrepreneurs out there that you thought, I like the way they work? Has that ever come to you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of entrepreneurs that, and it's mainly, I read this book called Winning Not Fighting by one of the co-founders of Leon, the sandwich chain. And that was really inspiring, learning about how to really harness teamwork and inspire people and work together through whatever happens. And that I think I found really inspiring. And in the technology areas, the Elon Musks with Tesla and other things, and other, companies that are really willing to push technologies and see how far they go and work collaboratively, I think is probably a very good way of moving forward as not just, our company in and of itself, but really as a broader society.
And what about advice for people starting up? What would you give in their way of advice, say a tip for the week for new starters?
Well, I think I can only speak from, our experience, which was that really, if you think you've got a good idea, to flesh it out and talk with people, but maybe explore the crowdfunding option, because actually it's a good way of getting a small idea ported, and then that can grow into a much bigger idea. And, our experience has been that keeping that conversation, really having an open, honest conversation with those investors and shareholders, is a very good way of both discipline as you grow your own company, as well as getting not just yourself excited, but your investors and shareholders excited.
Yeah. And that, I suppose, it keeps you grounded as well, because you're using their money to do it.
Well, you know what? Having friends and family, pretty much everyone in your life, sort of having invested in the company.
No pressure.
There's a little bit of pressure, but actually, it's good pressure.
Yeah, and you believe in it, obviously.
Yeah. Yes.
That's good. Well, thank you very much for talking to me today. It's been very interesting, and I will follow it because I found it fascinating. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.